The Sony a6000 and Sony ZV-E10 are two hugely popular cameras, both great for content creators, but which should you buy in 2022? In this video, we'll compare the Sony a6000 to the Sony ZV-E10 to find out which you should buy or whether you should upgrade. So I own both of these cameras. The a6000 came out in 2014 and I've had one since about 2019. With the ZV-E10, it's been out for around a year, so releasing in 2021, and I've had one since the release. So it's a question of old versus new, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't consider the a6000. And I've picked these two cameras for comparison as they're similar in many ways, and both suit content creators that want a compact camera with interchangeable lenses. So let's have a look at the side-by-side comparison of the features and specifications from both cameras. And they're similar in quite a lot of ways. They both have a 24 megapixel APS-C E-mount sensor, which is a little surprising seeing how much new one camera is to the other, but this does mean they are both capable of fairly similar images, which is definitely a plus point for the older of the two cameras. And they both use the Sony E-mount lens system, which is a huge selling point, as there is a huge range now of lenses, whether that be zoom lenses or fixed focal length lenses for portraits, macro photography, or all other types of shooting. All these options make both cameras very versatile. And they both have wireless built-in for transferring your images to your phone easily, making them very easy to share online. And the size and weight of these cameras is also very similar. The a6000 is just 1 gram heavier at 344 grams versus the 343 grams of the ZV-E10, so very similar in size and shape. And let's have a look now at some of the main feature differences which will help you decide which one is better for you. So the first major difference between the ZV-E10 and the a6000 is the stabilisation. The ZV-E10 has gyroscopic stabilisation built in, which isn't the same as in-body stabilisation, which you get on a lot of other Sony cameras. It's digital stabilisation which is applied to your shot. Now, as the a6000 has no stabilisation at all. Of course, you can get stabilisation for both cameras from in-lens stabilisation, but it's nice that the ZV-E10 has gyroscopic stabilisation built in, and I do find that it works pretty well. There's also a record limit on the Sony a6000. Your video clips can't be longer than 30 minutes, whereas on the ZV-E10, the record limit is for, well, as long as your memory card will record for. The Sony ZV-E10 does have a touchscreen, which is good for touch to focus, though it isn't touch to navigate the menus, whereas the a6000 doesn't have any touchscreen features at all. The maximum ISO on the ZV-E10 is 32,000 compared to 26,500 on the a6000, though I think they both do have extended ranges available. Now, there's considerably more focus points on the ZV-E10, 125 compared to 179 in the a6000, which means that you'll get much sharper and quicker autofocus and accurate autofocus on the ZV-E10. But it must be said that the a6000 autofocus is still pretty good, so even though it is better on the ZV-E10, it isn't bad at all on the a6000. Now, the battery life I do feel like is a big difference. On the ZV-E10, you can get about 440 shots from one battery charge. With the a6000, about 360. And I do find that the a6000 runs out of battery very quickly. Usually when I go out, even for just a few hours, I need to take at least one extra spare battery with me because it just seems to burn through the battery so quickly. So if that is a big issue for you, it's certainly better with the ZV-E10. The ZV-E10 has a microphone port, where the a6000 doesn't, which is really good for high quality recording options because the built-in microphones on both of these cameras are not amazing. They're good enough for some situations, certainly outside where there's a lot of external noise, neither of them are particularly good. And similar with a headphone port, there's a headphone port on the ZV-E10, whereas there isn't on the a6000. Now, a big feature of the ZV-E10 is that it has time-lapse recording built in, which is under the slow and quick function, which was a big selling point for this camera. The a6000 doesn't have it, but you can get it with an additional app through the App Store. Now, this is really not an amazing process. In fact, I have made a video about how to do this. The App Store is only available on older cameras, and it costs around $10 or something. So it's annoying to have to pay for that, and getting it installed isn't the easiest process in the world, but yes, it is available on the a6000, but not out of the box. The maximum video recording quality is 4K on the ZV-E10, where it's 1080p on the a6000. So if you need 4K video, you need the ZV-E10. The screen is very good quality on both of them, but for the ZV-E10, it does flip round the side so that you can see it from the front. So if you are taking a selfie or vlogging, you can use it very easily. Whereas the articulating screen on the a6000 only tilts up a little bit and not all the way around so that you can see yourself. If you need Bluetooth, the ZV-E10 does have Bluetooth built in for Bluetooth accessories. This is very, very useful for things like remote control so that you can control your camera from somewhere else. The a6000 does not have Bluetooth built in. A nice feature on the ZV-E10 is that it has eye tracking focus and animal eye autofocus tracking, which just means that tracking the eye of your subject, which is usually going to be your main point of focus, is done very well on the ZV-E10. Add that to the extra autofocus points that you've got, then you'll get a much smoother experience. There isn't either of these features on the a6000. It does track faces pretty well, but if you need those extra autofocus options, then the ZV-E10 is much better. And the last difference is the webcam functionality. Now, you can use the a6000 as a webcam, but you need an extra capture card to go in between your camera and the computer that you are going to be using it as a webcam with. With the ZV-E10, this functionality comes out of the box and is usable using the USB cable. Just be aware that when you are using that, you don't get full 4K resolution. I think it's actually 720p, which is a little bit disappointing, but to be honest, I use it as my main webcam all the time, and it still looks really good, especially compared to other people's webcams. And you can find full in-depth reviews of both of these cameras on my channel, so don't forget to subscribe and like this video. So the gyroscopic stabilization on the ZV-E10 allows you to fix shaky footage in editing by using the gyroscopic metadata. To fix shakiness in your shots, and this will need to punch into your shots slightly, so you will need to shoot in a slightly wider angle for the best possible results. But if you look at this in comparison to the a6000, which has no stabilization built in, you can only get stabilization from lenses, this feature of the ZV-E10 is a massive selling point and a lot of the reason why it is more expensive. I find myself using this stabilization quite a lot for handheld shots. It just can really help make your shots look a lot better, especially if you are not able to use a gimbal, which is obviously another expense on top. An advantage the a6000 has over the ZV-E10 is that it has the electronic viewfinder EVF. Now it's a 1440K dot electronic viewfinder, which looks really good. And seeing as the ZV-E10 doesn't have one at all, it means that you are relying on your screen to compose shots on the ZV-E10, whereas with the a6000, you have a lot more flexibility in those bright situations where you just can't see the screen at all. So this is a huge plus point, especially for photographers. So which camera is going to be better for you? From using both of these cameras for a lot of video and photography, especially over the last year, I personally prefer the a6000 for still photography, and that's mainly because of the EVF we've just been talking about. It makes composing your shots so much easier. The lack of 4K video obviously isn't an issue when it comes to photography, and while the autofocus system is considerably better in the ZV-E10, as well as having those extra picture profiles, you're obviously losing a little bit with the a6000, but you can still get very good results with this camera, so I certainly wouldn't rule it out. But of course, for video, in my opinion, the ZV-E10 blows the a6000 out of the water. The 4K video, the better autofocus, the gyroscopic stabilization, microphone port, front-facing screen, the list goes on and on. There are a lot of newer features that make the ZV-E10 stand out, especially for video creators, and for me it has become my main camera for all of my videos. I'm using it for this video here and pretty much all of my videos on my channel over the last year. But which of these two cameras should you buy? So the big question, of course, is the price difference, and it isn't as much as you would expect. The a6000 costs around $650 new at the moment, whereas the ZV-E10 is around $800, and that's both including a 16 to 50mm kit lens. This means, for me, if you can stretch to that extra $150, I'd definitely go for the ZV-E10. But of course, if you are on a strict budget, or if you already have an a6000 and were thinking of upgrading, I would probably stick with the a6000. As I've mentioned, the sensor being pretty much the same as the newer camera, a lot of the time your results will be very similar. And especially if you're not bothered about 4K video, then sticking with the a6000 might be the option for you. Do you have either of these cameras? Let me know in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and dropping a like on the video. But until next time, see ya.